The new set, Black Bolt and White Flare, is about to come out, and there are a lot of strong cards in the set. However, this new set doesn't really give us any brand new broken archetypes. What it mostly does is it actually gives old decks new upgrades to make them even stronger or more versatile within the meta. And in today's video, we're going to be looking at all kinds of old archetypes and how they get even stronger with the new set. Because this new set does give a lot of old decks a lot of new tools and tricks to work with to make them even stronger, and some cards even make old archetypes potentially the best deck in the format levels of powerful. So I'm excited to look at all that in today's video. Without further ado, let's look at these upgrades in today's video. To start things off, I want to talk about the impact as one of the best tool cards you're going to be getting in the new set, and that is Air Balloon. Air Balloon is a gigantic upgrade to a specific archetype, but it does help out a lot of older cards even more, making them a little bit more versatile and resilient to cards like Countercatcher, and also gives them a better time into stuff like Gardevoir EX. Specifically, I'm talking about Pokemon like Charizard EX, Marnie's Grimmsnarl, and Zoroark EX, Revavroom, and the Flareon EX deck. Air Balloon is a really nice one-of to splash into these decks, and they actually do make a big difference within the decks. The idea of these is all these Pokemon happen to have a 2 retreat cost, making them kind of awkward. Sometimes they get stuck in the active very easily, or worst case scenario, you're playing against Gardevoir and they attack you with Mind Bend, making it really hard to then attack. Sometimes you're forced to go for that coin flip to try to get an advantage. Charizard EX is very good in this format right now. I think Dragapult Charizard is one of the best decks in the Black Bolt White Flare meta. I think it has a good time into Gardevoir, and that's mainly because it gets Air Balloon. Now, usually what will happen in the matchup is like Gardevoir will try to Monkey Dory the Charizard to confuse it, to force you to have the 50-50 attack. Well, now that you have Air Balloon, you can just put your Air Balloon on the Charizard, retreat the Charizard into another Charizard, and get around confusion that way. It's a very good upgrade to Charizard EX. Also, the same can be said with Marnie's Grimmsnarl, which has an even better Gardevoir matchup than Dragapult Charizard or just normal Charizard, because Marnie's Grimmsnarl is like Dragapult and Charizard in one. You have this big dark attacker that also likes to throw damage back at your opponent, like with Dragapult EX. So, Grimmsnarl, same kind of thing happens. Sometimes Gardevoir will set up a bunch of monkeys, and they'll Mind Bend your Grimmsnarl, which has a 2 retreat, forcing you to retreat into a second Grimmsnarl. Now that you have Air Balloon in the format, you can Air Balloon your Grimmsnarl to retreat it under the Confusion Lock and then retreat into another Grimmsnarl without having to retreat and remove energy from your board, which is actually really important. So Air Balloon is great for both Charizard and Grimmsnarl to play around Monkey Dory. Also really good within Flareon. A lot of the evolutions have a 2 retreat cost, so now you can put Air Balloon on your Flareon, on your Leafeon, on your Sylveon to move them into the active spot a little bit more easily, especially if you use Flareon's Carnelian attack, which a lot of the time forces you to like have to play a switch or hard retreat your Flareon to attack again, because you can't attack twice after you use Carnelian. But with Air Balloon, you can Air Balloon your Flareon and then retreat into another Pokemon and attack with it and reset Carnelian without having to move the energy off of the Flareon, which is actually really important. And then against the draw engines, Zoroark and Revavroom really do like Air Balloon. Revavroom and Zoroark both are very powerful draw engines, but they suffer because they have a 2 retreat cost. So it's very easy for your opponent to just go Countercatcher Iono and then trap one of them in the active spot to slow you down and buy time. Or they'll Butter you and make it so that you have to really get lucky to get out of the active spot. Well, now that we have Air Balloon in the format, you can safely play Revavroom and Zoroark in your deck as a draw engine because you could just put an Air Balloon on them. Zoroark EX is its own archetype. I don't think it's going to play Air Balloon because I think End's Castle is just obviously better, but Air Balloon will be good if you're going to be playing Zoroark in a different type of deck. I've seen a lot of decks play Zoroark as a draw engine. Something like Dragapult EX has been starting to take advantage of playing Zoroark in the deck. That's another deck that will probably want to play Air Balloon. Also really good to have in a deck using Revavroom like Goldengo, which is a big deck that likes to use Revavroom in my opinion. I've always liked the Revavroom in Goldengo, and now that we have Genesect in the format, which we'll talk about very soon, Air Balloon is going to be great to play alongside the Revavroom if you're going to be playing it within Goldengo. Air Balloon makes it so good for a lot of these big dark Pokemon to beat Gardevoir and get around Monkey Dory. It makes Flareon a little bit more easy to manage your energy, and then also allows you to play different draw engines that don't just randomly get retreat locked because your opponent just goes Boss Iono or Countercatcher or whatever and then stops you from being able to move this cool draw engine. It's nice that this card came back. I think it really was necessary for some of these other draw engines that have a 2 retreat cost, because it feels like the only good draw engines were like Dracloak, Pidgeot, and like Dunsparce for a little bit. But now that we have Air Balloon, you can start to kind of look beyond those draw engines, because now you don't have to worry about getting Countercatcher stuck as easily because you have this Air Balloon back in the meta. It does come out at the same time of Tool Scrapper, so while it is coming back and it's very big for these cards, Tool Scrapper will exist, which will kind of hinder this card's playability a little bit, but not by much. I think this card is still great and will 100% see a lot of play. And these are some of the best cards that will want to play it, especially these dark attackers, which will want to play it as like a 1-of in their deck. It just makes it even harder for Gardevoir to deal with Grimmsnarl and Charizard in the active spot. Single price Pokemon haven't really been that great for a while, and that's just because a lot of the big archetypes, Gardevoir, Dragapult, Grimmsnarl, usually gatekeep how good these decks can actually be because they can just take too many multi-prize turns, or they can cripple your setup before you're able to really get going. But the addition of Brave Bengal, I think, actually makes a lot of the single prizers that have potential actually could become a lot stronger and a little bit more reliable to take down these big threats, because Brave Bengal makes them do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon EX. It only works on non-rulebox Pokemon. Now, there is one other huge one-prizer that will gain Brave Bengal. We'll talk about that very soon, but Brave Bengal is really good for a lot of these one-prizers. I think some of the most important ones I have listed here, United Wings could gain a Brave Bengal. United Wings is a really cool deck that has good type coverage with Dartrix. Having Murkrow is actually good against both Grim and Guardi, but the deck does suffer from lack of damage sometimes, and also by being low HP. Now that we have Brave Bengal, United Wings can actually hit a bit harder even quicker. Also, this card is really good with Ancient Box, another deck using Dark-type Pokemon. Ancient Box isn't a bad deck, but with Brave Bengal, now you can do even more damage. I think Ancient Box got nerfed quite a bit with the loss of like Pokestop and Greninja, but Brave Bengal could make the deck a lot better because now you can hit even harder, even quicker, if you can find a way to turbo through a lot of your ancient cards. Okidogi is another fun one that, could play it. It does, 170 damage with its ability, so, you're sometimes short on knockouts with a Brave Bengal and a couple Monkey Pings. All of a sudden, Okidogi is starting to hit even harder now. I think one of the best cards that really gains it is Dipplin Festival Lead, because now you can Brave Bengal your Festival Lead and swing for 130 damage really easily. It's like having Defiance Band for free. Whenever I'm playing the Festival Lead deck, I have a lot of situations where I'm like, I wish I could play Kieran here, or I wish I had a Defiance Band active right now and live on my Pokemon. Now that we have Brave Bengal, you can just slap a Brave Bengal on your Dipplin, and all of a sudden the Dipplin can take even bigger KOs. And it's actually a lot more threatening now to play against Festival Lead because of Brave Bengal. I think Brave Bengal is a great addition to the format. Any one prizer that we get, and there's even some new ones coming out in this new set, like even the new Zoar could play and get a lot of advantage out of Brave Bengal. Also, it's really easy to find with Arven. The fact that you can Arven for it is a huge win. Yeah, this card is great, and it's going to upgrade a lot of one-prize decks, and actually we could start seeing more one-prize decks pop up in the format now because they can start doing more damage and are a little bit more dangerous to play against. Now let's take a look at some old archetypes that get a big upgrade with this new set, and they get multiple cards. The first one I wanted to mention is Moridon, which legit might come back into the format now as its own deck because of cards like Electric and Zekrom EX. Moridon usually sees play right now as a support Pokemon for Joltik Box. They use the Moridon's ability, Tandem Unit, to get out your Joltik, get your own hands, get your Pikachu, set up your board a little bit, but now the deck has access to Electric and Zekrom EX, which means you can start to go back to attacking with Moridon more aggressively. Now, Electric has Dynamotor, which allows you to attach a Light Energy Verniscar Pile to one of your bench lightning Pokemon. It's very similar to Flaffy that rotated not too long ago, and obviously is a reprint of the old Electric from Noble Victories. And then it has a really good late game heavy hitter with Zekrom EX, which is like a probably even a stronger version of Burning Darkness, to be honest with you. It does 130 plus 50 more damage for each prize your opponent's taken, which means at a point of game, this card actually does more damage than Charizard's own Burning Darkness. Now that Zekrom is in the format, Moridon has a really good late game attacker it can rely on, because usually Moridon can struggle against big stage 2 Pokemon like Charizard and Guardi and Grimmsnarl and Dragapult because they have too much HP, and you're kind of forced to go around it with Iron Hands or something, or you have to play like Gravity Mountain Pikachu, but now you can just play Zekrom EX, which can flat out just blow them up at the end of the game, which is actually really, really cool. I've seen a lot of these Moridon decks playing cards like Magneton in them still. Even though you're still focusing on Electric and Electric Generator to put energy on the board, you can still use Magneton as a way to manipulate the prize trade for something like Zekrom's big attack, while also getting even more energy on the board. Moridon legit could be back in the meta because it gains these two cards. Electric is a big upgrade of the deck because now you have consistent energy acceleration without having to rely on cards like Generator and Power Glass and Joltik, and you have a really good late game attacker, which the deck was kind of lacking ever since Raichu V rotated out. Moridon is going to be a big new deck to come back, and also gaining Air Balloon in the same set's really good for Electric in general because now it has the ability to just have a way to retreat in and out of the active spot a lot more easily. Here is a sample Moridon list. There's different ways you can play the deck. Again, I've seen it with the Magneton, but a more simplistic approach is not bad either. You just play a lot of light energy in your deck. Make sure you have a high chance of hitting 2 energy off a generator. A lot of the time, you're looking to do that turn 1 Iron Hands EX, so making sure that those generators are hitting is very, very important. And I really do like the simplicity of this build. But again, I've seen stuff like using Magneton in the deck, which can help Zekrom do more damage, and you can also try out different lightning type single prize Pokemon like Thundurus and Zeraora, which can also make Moridon a lot stronger and have better board states where you can throw 1 prize at them and force them to gust you. I'm really excited to see Moridon come back in the meta now like this, and I think it's going to be really cool to have this deck good again, thanks to Generator, Electric, Zekrom being a really good synergy for this card. Next up, let's mention Dragapult. Now, I think Dragapult will get a little bit worse this set just because of the new addition of Jellicent EX in the meta. Jellicent is a very scary card for Dragapult to deal with, in my opinion. I think Gardevoir is going to potentially be S tier, if I'm going to be honest with you. It looks really, really good because of Jellicent, and I think Dragapult is going to get hit pretty hard because of Jellicent, but that doesn't mean Dragapult doesn't get new upgrades. Now, some of the new upgrades actually will make the deck a little bit more versatile and actually have a lot more consistency and power behind it. The first card is Air Balloon. Now, I did mention Air Balloon is good with all those big Dark-type Pokemon, but Air Balloon is good in Dragapult, too, because it gives you more mobility in a match. It also lets you play that Zoroark Dragapult deck a little bit more consistently. Also, if you're playing Dragapult Charizard, which could be the best way to play Dragapult in the Black Bolt White Flare format, Air Balloon is going to be a nice way to move your Charizard in an active spot. So you can kind of pivot between playing either a Charizard or a Dragapult deck because of Air Balloon, giving you the ability to move your Charizard very freely. So Air Balloon is really good for a lot of the Dragapult Dark Partner variants. Also, Meloetta EX is really cool. Meloetta has an ability where if you go first, you can attack with Meloetta, meaning that you can either use its first attack to donk like a Budew, or you can use it with TM Evolution. I've seen Dragapult playing a Meloetta with TM Evo, so what they'll do is they'll TM Evo the Meloetta, and turn 1, going first, they'll put 2 Dracloak on the board if they can find the TM Evo. I think it's a really cool concept, and being able to aggressively get your Dracloaks out isn't a bad idea, so Meloetta could be a cool new addition to Dragapult at getting out your Dracloaks even quicker. Also, Hilda, I think, is great for Dragapult. It's a good way to find both an energy and an evolution. It basically allows you to literally switch your deck for an evolution and energy card. It gets you any energy, not just basic energy. So you can obviously use it to get luminous energy, but you can also use Hilda to find stuff like the Neo Upper Energy if you're playing the Neo Upper Energy build of Dragapult. It literally just allows you to go get Neo Upper and Dragapult EX for free. Hilda is great for Dragapult. I think a lot of the Dragapult decks using Neo Upper Energy are going to play Hilda over something like Jock or Brock because it allows you to get energy, which allows you to also keep your board stable because you can keep up with the energy attachments. Another card that I thought was very interesting was actually the addition of Zoroark EX. I've seen some Dragapult lists in Japan playing Zoroark in them as a dark attacker to play to tech for the Guardi matchup. Because, yeah, we've seen, like, Dragapult EX, Zoroark EX be a thing, and that actually might become more of a meta deck going into the Black Bolt White Flare meta. And also, Dragapult Charizard is pretty good, too. But the addition of Zoroark could also be kind of cool. This 1-prize Zoroark has 2 pretty good attacks. You got Mind Jack that is 30 more damage for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So against Guardi, if they fill up their entire bench, which usually they will do versus Dragapult, you can actually then Mind Jack and one-shot the Gardevoir and the Jellicent fairly easily for just a single Dark Energy. So you can do that with a Luminous Energy. Or you can play its other attack, Foul Play, which you can play this alongside Hilda and the new Ignition Energy. You can Ignition Energy your Zoroark and then use Foul Play to copy your opponent's active Pokemon's attack, which allows you to copy something like the Jellicent attack or even something like Gardevoir's own attack to knock it out in one hit, or copy Clefairy's attack, which is kind of cool. So there's a lot of really cool things you could do with the Zoroark and Dragapult, and I've seen some pull lists playing the Hilda Zoroark Ignition Energy engine in them as another attacking option just to handle the Guardi matchup. So I think Zoroark could be a cool new addition to Dragapult, and is it better than playing Charizard or playing the Zoroark EX? I'm not too sure, but it is a cool idea nonetheless, and it does give you a really solid 1-prize attacker that has a lot of versatility thanks to its 2 different attacks it has access to, and thanks to Hilda, it's really not that hard to chain attacks with Zoroark. Of course, we had to mention Gardevoir, which actually could be the best deck in the format going into this meta, just because it gains the powerful Jellicent EX. Jellicent EX is a gigantic upgrade to Gardevoir and makes the deck extremely scary, because now Guardi can rely a lot more heavily on item locking your opponent while throwing damage on the board and putting on pressure with this big beefy wall with Jellicent. When Jellicent's in the active spot, you both item lock your opponent and tool lock them, which is actually really annoying. The fact they had to tool lock is kind of cringe because now all of a sudden you can't play Air Balloon or like TM Evo or anything to get around Jellicent and build up your board even more, which is actually pretty stupid. But the item lock thing is the scary thing, because now Guardi can just go like Iono counter catcher Jellicent, hit you for 160, and then throw all this damage off the board with Monkey. And if you can't really get around Jellicent, you kind of just lose, in my opinion. Guardi can really put you on the clock with the ability to spam Iono and counter catcher and Jellicent, making Jellicent a very powerful card in the deck. And I think Guardi Jellicent might genuinely be the S tier deck of this format. Also, Furlish is kind of crazy too. It's got Sea Shadows, which for 1 energy, you do 20 damage and item lock your opponent. So it's even stronger than Itchy Pollen, which is kind of crazy. You can like Furlish your opponent and slow them down a little bit while you build up the Jellicent. Guardi doesn't really play Budu right now. A lot of the Guardi lists are just playing like TM Evo, and they're just trying to get Guardi out as quick as possible to play as fast as they can and get those early Scream Tails off or aggressive Drifloons, or build up their board with Monkey Dories and Dark Energy. But this new Guardi build with Jellicent and Furlish goes back to slowing you down and making it harder for you to manage. In fact, Guardi with Jellicent actually makes the Goldango matchup a lot more favored. Guardi, I think its worst matchup right now could be Goldango Dragapult. Now that Jellicent is out and it's going to rely heavily on Jellicent, all of a sudden Goldango becomes a really strong matchup, in my opinion, for Guardi, because you can item lock them from playing Retrieval and from playing eSearch Pro. So you put a Jellicent in the active spot, you smack a Goldango for 160 damage, and you just basically say, hey, can you knock out my Jellicent in time before I run you over? Yeah, Jellicent is really good against Goldango, and it fixes one of Guardi's worst matchups. This card is insane for Gardevoir and makes the deck potentially the best deck in the format. This is a sample list of Guardi Jellicent. This is one of the best performing deck lists from the recent Japan Championships. As you can see, it's got a 2-2 line of Jellicent, really relying heavily on Jellicent, but it still has the old tricks like Monkey and Screamtail. Lily's Clefairy are still going to be in the deck. Also, playing cards like Klefki is interesting. I'm not sure what the Klefki's in there for, and the Cleffa. I think the Klefki is mainly there for like the Raging Bull matchup, which was popular in Japan. I don't think Klefki's actually that good in Guardi Jellicent. I think you would probably want to cut it for like another like basic like Mew EX, or even like second Screamtail or something, or Shaman. But yeah, Guardi Jellicent looks scary because it also plays Devo. So even if you do get these big attackers off, like with Charizard and Grimmsnarl and Zoroark, well, Guardi's going to be playing Devo again, meaning that they can slow you down with Technical Machine Devolution and wipe out your big dark threats. These big dark attackers are really good, like Grimm and Charizard are great against Gardevoir, especially with the Air Balloon out, so you can't get Mind Bended as easily. But the problem is Guardi is going to play Devo now, so they can go Devo Jellicent and stop you from being able to rare candy those dark Pokemon back into play because of item lock. It's a very scary combo, and I think that Guardi Jelly generally could be the best deck in the format in this meta, and it's a very terrifying deck. Jellicent makes Gardevoir so broken, it's something you have to look out for. Now let's talk about one of my favorite decks, Goldango. Now Goldango, arguably, besides Gardevoir, maybe actually gets the best upgrades from the new set, and that's because it gains 2 really good consistency cards with Genesect EX and Air Balloon. Goldango, right now, in our current meta, it's a pretty solid deck. I would probably put it near, like, the middle to bottom tier in like a top 10 ranking, like maybe like number 7 or number 6. But I think Goldango, with the new addition of Air Balloon and Genesect, shoots the deck from like that ranking to probably top 4, top 5 best deck in the format. It's actually that good. Genesect's ability allows you to search check for 2 Metal Evolution Pokemon and put them in your hand. This ability is bonkers. This is really good with other Metal Pokemon like Revavroom. It's good with Scizor. It's good with Archaludon. It's good with Metagross EX. But I think Genesect will mostly find its home with Goldango, because now you have a way to find 2 Goldangos for free, which is broken. Instead of having to rely on like TM Evolution to get your Dangos out, you can just Nest Ball for Genesect, turn that Nest Ball into 2 Goldangos. Kind of broken, kind of crazy. This ability is so good for Goldango. But it also gains Air Balloon. I did say earlier in the Air Balloon discussion that, yeah, Air Balloon is really good with all these big draw support Pokemon and really good with these big dark type attackers. But I think Air Balloon's best partner is going to be with Goldango, because it actually allows you to draw even more cards in a single turn. Goldango's ability states, which in the active spot, coin bonus, you draw 2 cards in the active. Then you usually draw a card on your bench. Cool, you draw 3 cards. Now that you have Air Balloon in the format, you can Air Balloon your Goldango, draw 2 in the active, retreat for free, because Goldango has a 2 retreat cost. Now it's got a free retreat cost with Air Balloon. You retreat into a second Goldango, you draw 2 more cards, essentially drawing an extra card, which can make a big difference when trying to pull off a double retrieval play, or when digging through your deck to find important resources like Cypher Maniac or Boss's Order. Yeah, Goldango with Air Balloon is so good. Goldango gets so much more faster and consistent with the addition of Genesect and Air Balloon, and I think Goldango will be good. The one thing holding Goldango back, though, in my opinion, will be Jellicent EX. Jellicent is a huge problem for Goldango. Guardi usually is Goldango's best matchup, but now the matchup is going to be arguably unfavored because of Jellicent, because you can't use Retrieval or E-Search Pro to knock out Jellicent, and it's also putting on a good amount of pressure by swinging for 160 damage, making you actually have to like deal with it immediately because it's going to start taking down your Goldengos fairly quickly. This is a sample Goldengo list from the Japan Championships. Just playing like stuff like 4 Bosses Order, just trying to be as quick as possible with gusting your opponent. You can play a lot faster now with Genesect because it actually allows you to easily find your Goldengos. Also, Scizor is really cool as a 1-prize option, really good into Raging Bolt, and also can somewhat be good into Gardevoir if their board is mostly abilities. And then obviously you still have your usual Fez and Monkey Dory in the deck, 2 important cards I don't think you can cut from Goldengo at this point. But yeah, Goldengo with Genesect is huge, and I think there might still be some ways to build Goldengo in this meta to try to counter Jellicent, because I think that will be the biggest obstacle for Goldengo. Having 4 boss is nice because it will allow you to just go around the Jellicent. You could just boss around Jellicent over and over again, which is a decent strategy at beating Jellicent, but is it the best way? I'm not too sure. Goldengo could also put Iron Bundle in the deck to help against Jellicent too. I don't know if there's any other attackers you can play. I don't even know if Pengo is going to be good anymore. Pengo doesn't seem great into Jellicent, and also Pengo might not be necessary because we have Air Balloon and Genesect now to find more cards and draw more cards in a single turn. A deck that I'm really excited to see potentially become a lot better is Ho-Oh Armor Rouge Toolbox, which does gain the addition of Prism Energy, Air Balloon, and a brand new attacker with Reshiram EX. Now, Ho-Oh Armor Rouge is a pretty solid little rogue deck right now. It's not a bad deck using Luminous Energy and all kinds of different attackers like Wellspring Ogerpon, Iron Hands, Durant EX, but now the deck gains a brand new special energy with Prism Energy, which I think is better than Luminous Energy, and also gaining Air Balloon means you don't have to bench Latias anymore, which can be pretty decent. You can freely use Air Balloon on your Ho-Oh EX as a pivot, and also gains a really good late game attacker with Reshiram EX, which is like the same as Zekrom. It does the same thing, 130 plus 50 more damage for each prize your opponent's taken, except the Reshiram I think discards energy from it, which doesn't really matter too much. Yeah, the Reshiram is a great addition to the deck because it gives the Ho-Oh Armor Rouge deck a really good late game attacker. The Prism Energy Reshiram combo I think is going to be really good, and that alone really does help upgrade the Ho-Oh Armor Rouge deck. But also I've seen it playing Jellicent. I've seen a few Ho-Oh Armor Rouge lists using Jellicent, which realistically only needs 1 Psychic and 3 Colorless Energy on it to do its thing. Being able to use the item lock and have a good Psychic attacker versus Dragapult isn't bad. It maybe makes Ho-Oh Armor Rouge have a better time into Dragapult by adding Jellicent in the deck. There's still a lot of really good attackers to choose from. Like I said, you do have the Iron Hands EX, the Wellspring Mask Ogerpon, and even using some dark attackers, like maybe you want to play the Umbreon EX still in your deck. The Durant is going to be really good against Charizard and Grimmsnarl and Zoroark EX, which will still be fairly popular in the meta. And then, of course, like I said, you can try out this idea of playing Jellicent in the Ho-Oh Armor Rouge deck. But yeah, the Prism Energy, the Reshiram, definitely good upgrades. Reshiram alone is a gigantic buff to the deck. Just being able to have that really good late game attacker now kind of fixes some of its issues where Ho-Oh, well, it is good at type coverage in your opponent or putting on pressure early on with Wellspring or Hands. It doesn't really have a good way to do big damage in the late game. I've tried out stuff like Gouging Fire in the deck, try to hit a bit harder. But now that we have Reshiram, well, problem solved. We can just use Reshiram EX, which doesn't even need the Rainbow Energy at that point. You can just put Fire Energy on the board and swing late game with your Reshiram. This deck generally could be meta, and this is a sample list that I've got here using the Reshiram, which you can see is kind of like behind my face cam here. Yeah, the sample list looks pretty solid. Again, using something like the Iron Hands EX, using the Wellspring early on, and then kind of late game going in with Reshiram, having Gigas as a nice big attacker to deal with Terra Pokemon, having Clefairy still to handle Dragapult a bit more easily, seems pretty good. And again, you're playing Prism Energy now over Luminous Energy, as you can actually stack Prism Energy on a Pokemon, unlike Luminous Energy, where you can't have the same special energy on it, because then Luminous Energy turns into a Colorless Energy if you have 2 special energy on that Pokemon. So yeah, Ho-Oh Armor Rouge might actually be meta now, and it actually could legit be a decent deck for Worlds. It looks like the Ethan's Pokemon are going to get upgrades, because not only does Ho-Oh get better, but so does Typhlosion. Typhlosion might be the best 1-prize deck going into this format, and that's just because of the addition of cards like Brave Bengal and the brand new Alomomola. Now, Alomomola is kind of cool because it allows you, when it's in the active spot, to search your discard pile for a basic Pokemon with 7 HP or less and put it onto your bench. I think this can grab you stuff like Cyndaquil and Victini, but also just being able to chain those Cyndaquils is going to be pretty good. And then Brave Bengal is really the icing on the cake. Brave Bengal is so good for Typhlosion. Typhlosion right now, it's decent, but it does struggle sometimes to hit those high numbers. You have to play like weird combos, like you're playing the Gravity Mountain with the Victini, or you have to play Max Belt in the deck. Now you can just play Brave Bengal, and all of a sudden Typhlosion does like 310 damage out of nowhere when you have all 4 Ethan's Adventures in your discard pile, making Typhlosion a huge force to be reckoned with. I'm a big fan of Brave Bengal in Typhlosion, and I think it actually might make Typhlosion a legit meta deck in the meta, because now we just have this really good tool card you can play. You don't have to rely on weird stadium cards or other weird tool cards instead of having consistency like playing Secret Box over the max bow. Yeah, Brave Bangle is great, and Typhlosion genuinely could be a meta deck because of this one tool card, and it makes it hit so much harder and makes Typhlosion even scarier, because I think it was kind of lacking something like Brave Bangle, but also lacking a decent consistency card like a Lomomola to help keep your Cyndaquils on the board. And yeah, I'm really excited to track Typhlosion when Brave Bangle releases, because it is such a good card for the deck. Finally, the last deck I wanted to mention that gets a bit of an upgrade with the new set is going to be Hydrogen EX. Now, I want to mention Hydrogen mainly because it is a dark deck, which, being a dark type, will be relevant in this meta against Gardevoir Jellicent, which I do predict to be the best deck in the format, but also because Hydrogen EX does gain a brand new Hydrogen that has some cool tricks up its sleeve. Now, the Hydrogen deck is not bad. It's had some moderate success in this meta with Pidgeot, with the Neo Upper Energy to try to take advantage of Obsidian, but the deck hasn't really moved the needle or anything. But it does gain a new Hydrogen, which you can actually use to some cool benefits. It's got this ability where when you knock out a basic Pokemon with its attack, you get to take an extra prize card. The problem is its only attack kind of sucks, where it needs 5 energy. Even in the normal Hydrogen deck with Crispin's Counter Gain and Neo Upper Energy, you're not building Dark Bite up quick enough. Also, it does 200 damage, which is already pretty mid. However, the combo will actually be to play it with Ignition Energy and Blindside. Its ability states when it takes a knockout, it does the extra damage, so that or takes extra prize, sorry, which means you can use any other attack. So if you can find a way to give Hydrogen another attack, technically the ability would work with that extra attack, like, of course, using it with TM Blindside. You put the Blindside on the Hydrogen, and you put Ignition Energy on it, you snipe something for 100 damage that already has damage counters on it, so you can snipe something and then knock it out. So you play that with Hawlucha, you Hawlucha something, or you use Monkey Dory maybe to do something to the active if the opponent plays a Shaman, then you snipe the Pokemon, knock it out, and take an extra prize. You can use this to kill little guys like those little Dreepies, those Ralts. Even other Monkey Dories technically get knocked out by Blindside if you have to put a damage counter on them. That would effectively put them to 100 HP remaining with a Hawlucha, and then you can knock them out Blindside. So you can actually pick off a lot of Pokemon with this card and take extra prizes pretty quickly, and if your opponent can't deal with it, you can eventually just run them over with the Hydrogen and then maybe clean up with a Blood Moon or Saluna, or put another Hydrogen EX into play with Crushing Headbutt or Obsidian, and then sweep your opponent that way. I wanted to mention this combo because I think it's really cool, and as somebody whose mascot is quite literally Hydrogen, I think it's pretty important to talk about this new Hydrogen EX in the Hydrogen deck, because I think it's a nice little upgrade to the deck and gives the deck a little bit more tools and versatility to work with, making it less linear and less susceptible to like getting bodied as easily by random Shamans being in players' decks, really hurting the power of Obsidian. So I'm pretty excited for this new Hydrogen EX to make Hydrogen EX, the old one, even better. But there you go, folks. Those are the upgrades that Black Bolt and White Flare give to some older archetypes. I know, again, there are stuff like the Genesect making stuff like Metagross EX and Archaludon even better, which is pretty important to talk about. But these are like some of the main decks I wanted to mention, and the main archetypes that will be a lot more stronger going into the World Championships, which the set will be legal for. And like I said, I do predict stuff like Gardevoir EX to be the best deck with Jellicent. Stuff like Dragapult will definitely fall off a little bit, but really will have to adapt, or Dragapult is going to have to play some kind of Dark Attacker in their deck to combat the power of Gardevoir Jellicent. And again, Air Balloon is a great addition. I think Air Balloon could be the best card from the new set, in all honesty. So I'm really excited for this new set to come out. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like. If you're new here to the second channel, make sure to subscribe down below. We're on the road to 25,000 subs here on the channel. Let me know what you think of these upgrades, and is there any other upgrades you could think of that make these decks even stronger? Let me know in the comment section below. I'm interested to hear. Catch you later. Bye-bye.